If you're like me, you were probably a little confused by the various takes you got from professional political pundits over the last couple of days following that cynical and transparent move by Merrick Garland appointing David Weiss as the special counsel. I'm really confused by so many Republicans saying, oh, none of it matters. They're going to get away with it. Here we go. I like to call them Eeyore Republicans. Well, let's get a little bit of an outside the box analysis on all of this from our favorite. Let's fire up your cigarettes, smoke that cigarette with David Marcus. Daily Mail, Daily Wire, all the dailies, Fox News. Hello, columnist David Marcus. How are you?
Hello.
So I felt like when this came down Friday night, you and I were the only ones on social media who were like saying, this is a huge deal. Biden is screwed. This is enormous. I mean, first of all, tell me why you think that's the case.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think this is a situation where conservatives really ought to take the win. Obviously, the appointment of Weiss as the special counsel is an attempt to slow walk everything that's happening in Congress. It's an attempt to continue this cover up, right?
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is, Joe Biden is caught dead to rights here. We now know that Hunter Biden was selling access to and influence over Joe Biden. I mean, that's not in dispute anymore. Dan Goldman says that, right? We know that Joe Biden was actively involved, whether knowingly or not, in doing this. That leaves one of two possibilities. Either Joe knew and he's guilty of bribery, or Joe didn't know and was taken for a complete ride, and the American people were taken for a complete ride by his son. Either one is not only impeachable, but probably reason enough for him to resign.
Well, yeah, and taken for a ride, fine, but understand he's lived in Washington since 1972 at the highest levels of power, either as a senator, a vice president, and now as a president. You can't claim ignorance. You can't walk away, I had no idea that was a problem. Of course he knew, or he's an ignoramus. It's one of the two.
Yes, I mean, that's absolutely true. And, you know, it potentially goes even beyond Joe Biden. I mean, did nobody in the Obama White House know that this was going on? I mean, were there conversations? Did anybody go up to Joe or to Joe's office and say, like, hey, you got to check out what your son's doing over in Ukraine because it looks a little sketchy, right?
Yeah. That's a great point. What did Obama know and when did he know it? Or the Kerry State Department or the Clinton State Department? There's also an aspect of this. You mentioned Representative Goldman. He was it. He was the only one. I was looking everywhere for a Democrat stepping out and saying, oh, now, it's not that big a deal. Dan Goldman, who, by the way, is independently wealthy because he's an heir to the Levi Strauss fortune, so he doesn't have to worry about fundraising. He's in a solid Democrat district, and he's only been in Congress for 6 months, David, and that's the only guy that could step forward and try to defend Biden.
Well, but he was also the lead prosecutor for the House in the first impeachment, which involved, obviously, Burisma and Ukraine and all this stuff. So, I mean, this is a guy who has his own skin in the game because right now it looks like his prosecution was not just ill-fated, but potentially malicious. I mean, how much of the information that we now know about Hunter was available to Democrats in Congress at the time that Trump was impeached? So it makes sense that Dan Goldman would be the only one out there because he's covering his own you-know-what as well.
Yeah, I suppose so. However, you can start to feel it, at least here in D.C. You're starting to feel this sort of anticipation that one of these Democrats will step forward and saying, yeah, I got a problem with this. This is a problem. Somebody's going to step out and, if not outright throw Joe Biden under the bus, at the very least be that maverick who says, no, we should stand for better than this. Who do you think it's going to be?
If I had to guess, I would pick somebody like a Ro Khanna, the representative from California. I think it's got to be somebody who's not too closely tied to Obama world, because the play here for a Democrat outside of Obama world is you become president, the age of Obama is over, right? The age of Obama kind of extended under Joe Biden because Joe Biden was Obama's vice president and he staffed, his White House completely with like Obama people. I mean, if a guy like Gavin Newsom wants to be the new king of the Democrat Party, this is the way to do it. And you'd have to ice out Team Obama. So it's going to be somebody from one of those types of camps.
Let's go back to one of the first things you said there, where Republicans need to learn how to take the W. And listen, I understand why Republicans feel so beat down and why they don't see any hope, because I've been paying attention for the last 10 years and the two tiers of justice and how Hillary can get away with it and how Republicans are dealt with. I get it. But what is it about Republicans that can't take the W, that we can't see this for what it is, which is, at the end of the day, it's been a horrible weekend for Joe Biden. This is the beginning of the end, in my opinion, and so few of us can actually see it that way.
I mean, look, you can walk and chew gum at the same time here, right? I mean, we can acknowledge that this is absolutely an attempt to cover up, the Biden brand scandal, which is my preferred term for it at the moment, while acknowledging that you've got the Washington Post editorial board, not an op-ed, the editorial board, saying that Joe's behavior here was, quote, not spotless, right? You've got Doug Schoen writing an op-ed over at the Messenger, saying that this is a scandal of access. Okay, but
that's a scandal.
That's a scandal.
Yeah. Well, you're right. I mean, the media cannot ignore it now. I mean, the guys over at Media Research Center have done all these studies about how, maybe the networks covered 4 minutes of the whistleblowers or 2 minutes of Devin Archer. Now you can't ignore it.
Yes, that's right. And I think that may also sort of answer this question about why it's difficult for Republicans to take the win. Is I think a lot of conservatives believe that there is no point at which the New York Times and the Washington Post and CNN are going to stop with, the charade of covering for Joe and Hunter Biden. But there honestly is. I mean, at the end of the day, these people are still professionals, and there is a point at which they're going to have to stop humiliating themselves.
While this was all taking place, you saw the amazing scenes in Iowa. I want to go to that state fair that during a presidential year. That just looked awesome. You had all the candidates out there flipping pork chops and eating things on a stick, and this is leading us.
Sell the town a boys band, Larry.
And this is leading us to the debate in 10 days. Whether Trump's on the stage or not, let's set Trump aside for a minute. How do the candidates handle this stuff, the Biden thing? Because to me, if I'm running for president, I'm going to spend all my time talking about Biden. I'm not even talking about Trump. This is about Biden. This is about the future of the country.
Yeah, I think there may be a way to sort of thread the needle and get a 2-for-1 there by pointing out that potentially, not potentially, in fact, this is already happening, that Trump's legal woes, the fact that he's, as of this week, going to have apparently 4 indictments, be, as Chris Christie puts it, out on bail in 4 different jurisdictions, that this makes it harder for Republicans to attack Joe Biden and the Biden brand scandal in general. Now, that's true. We've already seen Democrats start to, with the whataboutism. Well, Trump's under all these things. So I think you may see a DeSantis or maybe a Vivek or, sort of make that argument of we need someone cleaner here to really create the dichotomy.
So in other words, it would be great to make a big deal about these Biden crimes as long as we had a candidate who also wasn't under indictment. Yeah, it is a needle to thread, that's for sure. What about Trump? Are you surprised? He seems to be still spending most of his time attacking DeSantis.
It's odd. I don't understand it. I think right now, clearly for months, what Team Trump has been trying to do is create an air of inevitability. This thing's over, right? And you see them saying everybody should drop out right now and put all their money behind Trump. And clearly that's not going to happen before Iowa or New Hampshire. But Trump's kind of stagnant in the polls at around 50%, which is great. I mean, that's obviously anybody in the field would trade places with him right now. But I don't see him pivoting to attacking Biden. I don't see him pivoting to a sort of general election type of campaign. And that does surprise me.
All right, David Marcus, we'll leave it there. We'll keep looking out for your columns. It's always good to talk with you. And go ahead and fire up another one. You need to get through the night.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, David. There's more to come. Keep it here. It's O'Connor Tonight on the Salem News Channel.